Greetings to all of you from University of Peradeniya. We are very pleased to announce the commencement of Sir Ivor Jennings Oration 2025, the moment we've all been waiting for. To start the proceedings, I cordially invite Dr. Kalna Senaratna, the head of the department, to deliver the welcome address.
Good evening, everyone. The Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Ravi Kurupage, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, our distinguished orator this evening, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Dr. Prabhat Ekanayaka, Professor Deepika Udagama, Chair Professor of Law, and the Chairperson of the Organizing Committee, members of the departmental and university staff, distinguished invitees and students. On behalf of the Department of Law, University of Peradeniya, I wish to welcome all of you very warmly to the Sir Ivor Jennings Memorial Oration of 2025. The Department of Law, which is now in its 16th year since inception, inaugurated the Sir Ivor Jennings Memorial Oration when it celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2019. The oration, which commemorates the legacy of Sir Ivor Jennings, the founding Vice Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya and a foremost constitutional law scholar of his time, is meant to be a platform for eminent public law scholars and practitioners to share cutting-edge ideas on public law. We've had a stellar list of orators who've delivered this memorial oration. The inaugural oration was delivered by Professor Savitri Gunasekara, a graduate of the University of Peradeniya and an emeritus professor of law of the University of Colombo. This preeminent legal scholar from Sri Lanka was followed by another preeminent scholar, Professor Philip Alston, from the New York University, who delivered the second oration. The third oration was delivered by an equally distinguished judge and scholar, Honorable Justice S. Muralidhar, who was the Chief Justice of the High Court of Orissa, India. Today, we are extremely honored that a legal scholar, lawyer, and human rights activist of the caliber of Dr. Shahdeen Malik from Bangladesh has agreed to deliver the fourth oration on a topic which is of tremendous importance, not just to those in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, but to all within the South Asian region and even beyond. The Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, the Dean, and Professor Udagama will have more to say about the legacy of Sir Ivor Jennings, about the oration, and indeed about the orator. But before I hand over the proceedings, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Professor Udagama in particular for all the hard work she put in terms of contacting Dr. Malik and ensuring that an oration of the highest quality was organized. I wish everyone a thought-provoking and intellectually stimulating oration. And with that, may I now invite the Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Ravi Kurupage, to speak a few words on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalna. Good evening to all of you. On behalf of the University of Peradeniya, I wish to warmly welcome all of you to the Sir Ivor Jennings Memorial Oration of 2025. In particular, I wish to thank our distinguished orator, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, an eminent jurist, constitutional expert, a legal activist, and advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, for accepting our invitation and gracing the occasion. We are deeply honored. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the passing of Sir Ivor Jennings, the founding Vice Chancellor of University of Ceylon, and thereby of the university system in Sri Lanka. We are very pleased that the Department of Law of the University of Peradeniya has institutionalized this memorial oration to commemorate him and his legacy, which we all aspire to carry on. While the University of Peradeniya itself is perhaps the most enduring momentum, to him, we Sri Lankans owe a deep debt of gratitude to Sir Ivor Jennings, whose scholarship and foresight guided this country's higher education in its formative stages. This memorial oration was conceptualized as a platform for public scholars and practitioners of emergence to prevent their thoughts and ideas on issues of governance and the large public. Speaking of the iconic personality, we are commemorating today Sir William Ivor Jennings, was born in 1903 in Bristol, the United Kingdom, and worked his way from humble beginning to Cambridge through scholarship, where he excelled first in mathematics and then in law, ending with first classes in both. He was a prominent educator and held high academic reputation of being the author of several well-known classics in the field of constitutional law. When he arrived in Colombo in March 1941, he was just 38 years of age, and he was ready to engage in the hard work required to establish an independent and autonomous institute capable of training the future leaders and the intellectuals to lead the emerging independent Ceylon. Two principles he believed in fervently when creating such an institution were university autonomy and academic freedom. His main goal was to establish a seat of liberal higher education to mold the influence the minds of future leaders of Ceylon. He firmly believed that a university is a world with a life of spirit of its own and recognized its task to be much wider than mere training up to degree standards. Sir Ivor Jennings said that it was his hope and wish that all undergraduates obtain their degrees and be educated in the process, whereby an important distinction between being academically qualified and being learned, cultured, refined, courteous, knowledgeable, tolerant, etc. was made. Thanks to all his vision and perversions, we have in Peradeniya not only in academic infrastructure required by leading university, but also a campus of unparalleled natural beauty that contributes to the nurturing of sensitive and reflective learning. The University of Peradeniya, which comprises of 9 faculties, 73 departments of study with over 12,000 students, is presently striving to achieve its vision of providing a uniquely transformative experience for its students, staffs, and as well as partners, whilst serving the public through producing and implementing innovative research and outreach programs that are anchored in its founding values and principles. And I am appreciative of the unique approach adopted by the Department of Law, which advocates law as a tool of social transformation for the better and a champion of social justice, and not merely as a means of resolving disputes through litigation. I have no doubt that the ideas presented today will provide great intellectual stimulation and much food for thoughts on public law. I once again thank all our distinguished orator, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, and look forward to the oration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I now invite Dr. Prabhat Ekanayakar, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, to address the gathering.
Hi, thank you, Pramoda. Very good evening to all of you. And I think this is a great event organized by the Department of Law. Sir, Acting Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of Peradeniya, our distinguished orator, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, all the way from Bangladesh. Thank you very much, sir, accepting our invitation and giving this kind of wonderful insight and try to educate our people and exchange your expertise and the experiences in the field of law and other form of government, constitutional and other areas of law. And especially I need to thank Professor Deepika Udagama. You are the pioneering scholar and figure of organizing this kind of event. Actually, your role is immense support to the faculty and the department, and not only that for Sri Lanka, but also the outer world. And head of the department, Dr. Kalana Senaratna, and staff members, without your dedication, we cannot organize this kind of event. And distinguished invitees and our students, I know you are getting very much insight, needed things for the future development of your life. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I wish you all the success and welcome to this wonderful, important event. You know that we can share our experiences, and also we can learn what elsewhere, other outer world is having the education in this field, especially legal education. You know, the Department of Law established in about far back, about a couple of decades ago in our university, but later shifted to the University of Colombo. But it came back to Sri Lanka, bring back to the University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka, by the eminent Professor Deepika Udagama. She is the pioneering figure establishing our department under the Faculty of Arts. Now we are trying to establish School of Law. We already proposed that proposal and table at the University Grant Commission. They approved. Now we have to we develop the proposal to establish the School of Law. Thank you very much, madam, for your contribution and the staff. Without your dedication, we cannot achieve this type of development within our university. No need to say, as very correctly mentioned by our Deputy Vice Chancellor, the contribution done by Sir Ivor Jennings, without him and father of the pre-education of Sri Lanka, Dr. Kannangara, contributed a lot to development the education system in Sri Lanka, and also the establishment of this prestigious university. As very correctly said, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, we have more than 15,000 students and national and international level. So we are catering different type of degree programs, including 9 faculties. So this is the service done by the person, English person, but think to develop our education system in Sri Lanka, and contributed his life, dedicated his life along with Dr. Kannangara to provide pre-education and the education which related to the national development and in line with Sri Lankan culture, inclusive education, all the parties included, regardless of their race, the ethnicity, or religious the background, without any discrimination, all of them can participate, access to the pre-education in Sri Lanka. Credit should goes to Sir Ivor Jennings and father of the pre-education, Dr. Kannangara. So with that, their contribution, we established this education system, this university, to provide education and enlighten our people in this country and elsewhere of the world. So this is the background of our university, our education system. Sir, Dr. Shah Malik, you are joining today with the invitation of the professors, lecturers. So, sir, thank you very much for your contribution, and your insight will develop our future intellectuals, future expertise in legal education system. You know that Sri Lanka, after several decades of hampering our education, not only education, economically, we are backwards at the moment. And also we are having several problems in understanding and implementing a law and order within the country. There are so many issues, and ordinary people don't know their rights and basic legal enforcement. These are the things we are having at the moment, and countries struggling to bring back our glory. What we are talking about, we had before the independence, maybe before under the foreign invasion in Sri Lanka. Anyway, we are together in we are living in the same region of South Asia, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal. Nepal also having serious issue at the moment. The Sri Lanka had experienced such type of aragale about a couple of the years ago. So with that experience, we would like to learn from you how we can establish law and order within Sri Lanka. So, sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and giving this wonderful opportunity to our legal expert and legal expert in future experts and students. So, as the Dean of the Faculty, I am very proud to say that this is great opportunity you are giving to our student and our faculty. Thank you so much, sir, and all the participants.
Thank you very much, sir. Before our distinguished orator for this occasion, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, takes the floor, I cordially invite Professor Deepika Udagama, the Chair Professor of Law, to introduce him to the gathering.
Thank you, Pamoda. Good evening to all. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Shahdeen Malik, our distinguished orator. Dr. Shahdeen Malik is an eminent Bangladeshi constitutional law scholar whose work straddles academia, legal practice, and legal activism. He started his academic career as a lecturer in the Department of Law at the University of Dhaka, Bangladesh in 1980. Thereafter, he served the Dhaka University as the founder director and professor of the School of Law from 2004 to 2014. He continues to teach as an adjunct professor in several universities in Bangladesh. Dr. Malik's research and scholarship has been published in a number of international journals in the USA, Netherlands, Germany, India, and Bangladesh. Dr. Malik's educational qualifications include LLB degree from the Dhaka University, LLM degrees from Patrice Lumumba Friendship University, Moscow, University of Pennsylvania Law School in Philadelphia, USA, and a PhD in law from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. Turning to his role as a legal practitioner, Dr. Shahdeen Malik is an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and head of chambers of Ergo Legal Counsel. His practice spans over 2 decades in the Supreme Court and the District Court, where he was enrolled in 2000 and 1996 respectively. In addition to practice and academia, Dr. Malik has served as the Honorary Director of the Bangladesh Institute of Law and International Affairs from 2010 to 2019, and he has also worked as a consultant for various international organizations such as UNDP, UNICEF, ILO, USAID, Swedish SIDA, Canadian SIDA, and Deferred, and several others. He continues to give leadership to civil society. That's why he straddles so many areas of activity. He commenced civil society activities through the Bangladeshi Legal Aid and Services Trust, popularly known as BLAST, a very prominent Bangladeshi civil society organization. He currently serves as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Center for Policy Dialogue and the Refugee and Migratory Movements Research Unit, and also ActionAid Bangladesh and several other civil society organizations. He's also a long-standing columnist for the daily Prothom Alo, reflecting his contribution as a public intellectual. Dr. Malik's perspectives on constitutional politics and law in Bangladesh is sure to be informed and enriched by all those diverse experiences. We do look forward to the oration. Dr. Malik, you're warmly invited on behalf of the Department of Law to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Deepika Ugadama. It's a great honor and privilege for the invitation to speak in the Sir Ivor Jennings Memorial Oration. I must first thank the university authorities, the acting Vice Chancellor, the Dean, the Chair of the Department of Law, and you, Deepika Ugadama, for the very kind words. And again, I cannot but re-emphasize that it's a great honor and privilege for me to be invited to this auspicious occasion. Constitutionalism in South Asia has never been a boring area of law. As we speak today, or as we gather here, people have gathered in Kathmandu to select the next head of the government after the fall of the last government. So Nepal is going through a very challenging and exciting time. And I think we have had experienced similar moments in Sri Lanka in 2022, in Bangladesh in 2024. And the challenges have been varied, but also at the same time, not unsimilar. Being involved with constitutional law, constitutional politics, and constitutionalism, maybe even beyond this sort of three countries, other South Asian countries in varying degrees, like Pakistan, India, also had their challenging moments, ups and downs. So it's a rich field for anyone interested in constitutionalism. I mean, our region is an area of success, failure, experimentation, upheaval, frustration, but also filled with moments of hope and aspirations. The story of Bangladesh, constitutional story of Bangladesh, I doubt is not very well known. To give my perspective and situate our current moment after the ouster of the last autocratic regime in August 2024, I suppose, with your permission, I will delve into our constitutional history first. The story of independence of Bangladesh is also a constitutional story. Before 1971, before the independence of Bangladesh, we were, as I'm sure all of you know, the province of Pakistan, 47 Indian division of Indian subcontinent into two countries, Pakistan and India, left us as the eastern province of Pakistan. The constitutional journey of Pakistan from 47 to 1970 was a checkered one, or perhaps one can even say that a disappointing one. Pakistan had its first constitution in 1956, only to be scrapped 2 years later in 1958. The next constitution of 1962 of Pakistan was scrapped in 1969. both times by the military rulers. So in 1970, Pakistan did not have a constitution. And the first election were held in end of 1970 for a national assembly solely, or in other words, constituent assembly, solely for the purpose of framing a constitution for Pakistan. Now the Awami League, the largest political party in East Pakistan, campaigned with a 6-point demand and outline for a future constitution of Pakistan. And this outline promised that the constitution of Pakistan will ensure a loose government in the federation and autonomous provinces for Pakistan. Center having sort of command only over foreign matters, the army, and some few economic issues, but rest of the sort of executive authority and legislative authority for the provinces will rest in the province. It was a bold idea because throughout the 50s and 60s, Pakistan was a heavily centralized country with all power emanating from Islamabad, the capital situated in the then West Pakistan. Now, the military rulers of Pakistan did not expect Awami League to win that election, but Awami League did. And suddenly the idea of a very weak central government and with virtual autonomy for provinces under the proposed 6-point program became obviously a very existential threat for the central government. And they were determined to prevent Awami League, which had the majority in the election, to frame such a constitution. The National Assembly was convened for 1st March 1971 and promptly then postponed by the army. And the army started to plan for physical intervention through guns and cannons to quell the demand for autonomy of the Awami League-led Constituent Assembly. The result was a massive sort of armed crackdown on 25 March 1971, and the assembly members were scattered. But independence was declared on 26 March, and this elected representatives whom the people had elected to frame a constitution, many of them fled to India, and 2 weeks later, on 10th April 71, proclaimed our Declaration of Independence. Now, for the constitutional story, this is important in that sense, that those representatives who proclaimed the Declaration of Independence based their authority or legitimacy on the fact that they were elected to frame a constitution. Our Proclamation of Independence starts with the words like, "We, the elected representative, are duty-bound to frame a constitution for Pakistan." And the Pakistan government, through a regime of terror and brutality, prevented us from sitting and framing a constitution. In order to carry out the mandate entrusted to us by the people, we find it impossible to frame a constitution within the state structure of Pakistan. And therefore, we declare Bangladesh to be an independent state so that we may frame a constitution or carry out our responsibility entrusted to us by the people. So then 71 was the armed struggle for liberation of Bangladesh. And with the aid of Indian Army in July 1971, the Pakistan Army surrendered and Bangladesh became an independent state. on December 1971. So the point I want to emphasize, the legal basis for Bangladesh to become an independent state was for the elected people to frame a constitution, which they could not do within the structure of Pakistani state. So after independence, in January 72, a temporary government was formed, and the Constituent Assembly first formally convened in April 72. And it decided to proceed by forming a 34-member Constitution drafting committee to do the basic legwork. And then the whole Constituent Assembly met in October 72. Again, one interesting aspect is that because this assembly was a constituent assembly, throughout the deliberation, throughout in 72, it did not enact any law because they emphasized that we are elected to frame a constitution, not enact law. So finally, they set for the final round of discussion, deliberation in October. By 4th November 72, they finalized and adopted the draft with the declaration that the Constitution will commence or come into force on 16 December 1972. That is on the first anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh. Between 14th and 16th December 1972, almost 400 members of the National Assembly put their signature on the draft first constitution, and that signature also constituted their resignation from the Constituent Assembly. In many similar situations, we have seen several examples of Constituent Assembly adopting a constitution and turning themselves into the first parliament or first legislative assembly. But our Constituent Assembly did not do that. They adopted the constitution and thereby resigned from the assembly, and the first election under the 72 constitution was held in March 73. This moment, I think, was the peak of our pristine constitutionalism. The country was liberated with the promise of the constitution, and a liberal bourgeois constitution was framed within a year, and then the country was supposed to run under or by the authority of the constitution. Unfortunately, after this pristine high moment of constitutionalism, our journey from 73 is not a very glorious one. The next period was 73 to 75. Awami League won the election in 73 with landslide victory. But soon there were derogations and departures from the regime of rights established by the 72 Constitution. The second amendment in end of 1973, brought in preventive detention. As with many sort of liberal bourgeois constitution, a person is deemed innocent until proven guilty. But in our region, police can arrest a person on the allegation of committing a crime and then takes him or her to the magistrate, and magistrate can order further detention or release him on bail. But this very second constitution in 73 introduced the preventive detention. That is, a person can be arrested on the suspicion that he is about to commit a crime, i.e., before he has committed any crime, but the government suspects that he may embark on committing a crime. And so the Constitution now amended and said that the person can be arrested after committing a crime or even before committing a crime. So this constitutional, I would say, deviation from this presumption of innocence till proven guilty was taken away, and a Special Power Act in 1974 was enacted to sort of provide for this framework of preventive detention. And a person arrested under preventive detention law was not required to be produced before magistrate, and he can be or she can be locked away for 6 months. And the period of detention can then be extended by a 3-member quasi-judicial body for another period of 6 months and further periods of 6 months. So this, and then the major constitutional deviation was with the 4th Amendment of Constitution in 1975. Because 73 and 74 was a difficult period for the country. The War of Liberation was savage and there was a lot of destruction of physical and other infrastructures. And the governments failed to manage the economy properly. There was a huge allegation of mismanagement, corruption, and nepotism. And also we had a famine in 74. This political, economic, and governance turmoil led to sort of extreme, not on a large scale, but to a certain degree, armed violence from the left and the right. And its justification is that it prompted the Prime Minister to proclaim the 4th Amendment in January 1975. And Bangladesh, from a parliamentary system of government, was suddenly turned into an extremely powerful president with an extremely powerful president, the presidential system of government. It also, with this promise of pluralistic parliamentary democracy, it completely deviated, and this 4th Amendment also established a one-party state and banned all the political parties except the ruling party with its 3 minor supporters. All other political parties were banned. And similarly, all the newspapers except 4 were also banned. So it was a rigid one-party presidential system was introduced in January 75. So this period, 73 to 75, was certainly a period of not expansion of democratic space or right, rather contraction in severe manner. Then the constitutional story took another violent turn in August 75 when Sheikh Mujib, the father of the nation and the prime minister, then president, was killed along with members of the family. And finally, and then it ushered in a 15-year period of military coups and martial law regimes. So our journey in the next sort of 15 years, so from 75 to 1990, was a period, as I already mentioned, of military dictatorship, then military turning into a civilian dictator, then again replaced by another military dictator. In 75, Ziaur Rahman, the then head of the army, took control over the country in November 75. And he did roll back the one-party system and allowed gradually multi-party other political parties to reactivate themselves, and also allowed some freedom of speech. So these changes were made in the constitution through a series of martial law proclamations. So 75 to 79, we witnessed, I think, 15 martial law proclamations, amended several provisions of the constitution to at least give back some of the political rights, some of the freedom of speech and other rights. And in the meantime, he also founded his own political party, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which predictably won the second parliamentary election in 1979. And the second parliament then passed the Fifth Amendment, which sort of justified and constitutionalized all the political, legal, regulatory steps taken between 75 and 79. This amendment, in sort of few short sentences, said that everything that was done between 75 to 79 would be deemed to have been done under the Constitution. In 79, Zia became a civilian leader. He won the presidential election, but this was also a period of continued unrest in the army. There were several unsuccessful military coups attempts against Ziaur Rahman, but finally these attempts caught up with him, and he was assassinated in 81 by a section of the army. His civilian vice president took over power and ruled for a few months, to be ousted next year in 82 by the army chief, now General Ershad. He also followed the earlier model of President Zia, ruled the country through decrees and martial law proclamation, martial law orders from 82 to 86. And by 86, he also formed his own party, Jatiyo Party. And the third parliamentary election was held in 86. And Ershad's Jatiyo Party duly won the election and passed the seventh amendment to the parliament, again similarly saying that all the actions, laws, regulations, measures taken between 82 and 86 would be deemed to have been taken under the authority of the Constitution. But this was also in one way sweeping quasi-constitutional legitimacy, but it didn't, at the same time, it could not subdue the culture of protest. Throughout late 70s and during the regime of Ershad, students, intellectuals, lawyers, and civil society organizations constantly protested against his regime, organized boycotts, and what we popularly call Hartal, that is countrywide shutdown. And these ultimately forced Ershad to quit in 1990. But I must mention that in 72, among the four constitutional pillars, two were socialism and secularism. The principle of socialism was eroded during the Ziaur Rahman regime. Instead of secularism, trust in Almighty Allah was inserted in the constitution. And this sort of political Islamization was taken a step further by Ershad in 1988, when the 8th Amendment to the Constitution proclaimed Islam as the state religion. But as I had mentioned, his regime was ousted in 1990 through popular and mass movement. And it ushered in also a very interesting period of constitutional experimentation. With Ershad gone, the issue aroused, which I think the Nepalis are discussing today, who would be in charge of the government. And all major political parties agreed through sort of quick consultation among them that the then Chief Justice Shahabuddin, would become the head of the caretaker government and would conduct a free election. This he successfully did. And then beginning of 1991 was the first experimentation with what we came to term as non-party caretaker government, headed by the highest judicial officer of the country. So Justice Shahabuddin delivered in 1991 first election, which was deemed to be free and fair. And this brought BNP, Bangladesh National Party, into power in 1991. But the distrust between the political parties continued, and by 94, most political parties took the position that any election under a ruling party, under a political government, would not be fair, and we should repeat the experiment of Justice Shahabuddin's caretaker government. And the BNP was compelled to pass the 13th Amendment of the Parliament, 13th Amendment of the Constitution in 1996, which sort of constitutionalized this new experiment of a limited government for 3 to 4 years, consisting of the last retired Chief Justice and technocrats, 10 technocrats and advisor, and their sole task was to arrange a free, fair election. And the presumption was that since this ministers of the caretaker government were not politicians, they were technocrats, and they would be neutral, so they wouldn't have any stake in ensuring win for any particular party. And elections under this caretaker government were successful, was deemed free and fair in 1996, in 2000 and 2001. 1991 was an ad hoc caretaker system, and then constitutional caretaker system in 96 and 2001. BNP won in 91, Awami League won in 96, again BNP won in 2001. So there were a number of peaceful transfer of power among competing political parties. However, in 2004, the next constitutional amendment tried to tinker with the caretaker government. Ostensibly, this amendment increased the retiring age of justices from 65 to 67. So in a way, it was a very technical, it did not, of course, change the retirement age. But the caretaker system provided that the last retiring Chief Justice would become the head of the caretaker government. So by increasing the retirement age of the judges, BNP seemed to facilitate or they ensured that the last retiring Chief Justice would be someone they would prefer to run the caretaker government. So again, this erupted in political protests and violence against this because this amendment undermined the neutrality of the caretaker government. And finally, BNP was again now forced out of power in end of 2006. And now the new caretaker government, with the support of army, took over the running of the country between 2007 and 8. It initiated major anti-corruption drive and reform efforts, and more importantly, all the voters of the country, but a voter list of all the voters of the country with photo ID was initiated, and they completed this photo ID voter cards by 2008, though it failed in its other reform measure against corruption or governance reforms. But at least all the citizens now had photo voter ID, and the next election was held in end of 2008. It was also a fair election, and it saw return of Awami League back to power with a super majority. So to continue this story, in 2010, I think this part of the story would be the sort of rise and fall of caretaker government. The caretaker government performed in the 90s and 2000, and fall was caused by a judgment of the Supreme Court in 2010, which ruled that the non-elected caretaker government was unconstitutional. And the logic that the Bangladesh is a republic, which presupposes that it will be governed always by elected persons. And there's no scope, even if for 3 months or 4 months, for it to be governed by a body or a government which was not elected. So 2010 judgment declared the caretaker government unconstitutional, though initially it provided that next 2 elections could be held under a caretaker government. But this judgment was soon seized by Awami League, and it, by 15th Amendment of the Constitution in 2011, it totally abolished the provision of caretaker government. So going back to the 70s and 80s situation, where elections were to be held during the tenure of political government. And we had parliamentary elections in 2014, 18, and 24, all under the ruling Awami League government with very predictable results. In these last 3 elections under the Awami League government, it managed, quote unquote, to win super majority in the parliament. Obviously, most political parties boycotted this election, protested against this election, and tried to oust the Awami League from power without much success. And this 2010 to 20 and beyond was a period of parliamentary dictatorship of one person, Sheikh Hasina. And now the brutality of the regime, including extrajudicial killing and forced disappearance, are emerging in the newspapers almost every day. And it became gradually, as the nature of unaccountable government with massive corruption. So unaccountable government, diminishing of rights, corruption of a coterie is a familiar story known to most of our South Asian countries. But again, sorry, it did not mean that there were not protests. So we had the again cycle of protests against the Awami League government. And finally, in July 2024, July and August 2024, young students took to the street in massive numbers. And honestly, even in sort of 7 or 10 days before the outside of Sheikh Hasina, most of us did not think that the students would succeed, in spite of massive deployment of violence by the government, with almost order to shoot at sites, and few hundreds were killed and thousands were arrested. But nevertheless, Hasina was forced to flee on 5th August 2024 with her family members and senior leaders who all took shelter in India. So, with the flight of Sheikh Hasina, not have a government for a few days, but then Professor Yunus, who is the only Nobel laureate of Bangladesh, was invited by the students and other political groups. And he came back he was on a visit to France, I think. He came back and took office on 8th August 2024. Formed an interim government with 20 or so advisors, high ministers. It was an interesting mix of a cabinet because some of these 20, now I think the number is increased by a few, but it was a mixture of senior retired bureaucrats, few university professors, leaders of some civil society organizations, and some of the protesting students. So it was a curious mix of government with people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and different aspirations. But there was a lack of cohesive political and other visions. Before I continue with the current regime and its problem, I think I must point out that our political history since early 80s till today has been a history of dynastic clashes. We have two dominant families. After the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his eldest daughter, Sheikh Hasina, became the leader of Awami League in 1981. And she has continued in that position till today, I think some 45 years, for some 45 years. And similarly, after the assassination of General Ziaur Rahman, his widow became the leader of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, somewhat in the same time in early 80s. And also she has virtually continued in that position. But she sort of, because she was jailed in 2018, and before going to jail on sort of some dubious corruption charges, she handed the mantle of the party to her exiled son in London, Tariq Rahman, who has now been the head of BNP for last 6 or 7 years, ruling by diktats from London. So these two families have continued to dominate our political landscape. And even during relatively democratic regimes of 1990 and early 2001, the constitution was used and misused and abused to ensure the longevity of each of this family whenever they were in power. So the politics revolved around this, what I think the economists had termed some years ago, clash of two begums. And it has obviously thwarted emergence of any other political party or leadership outside the two dominating families. And this has been one of the, the darker side of our both political and constitutional development. Okay, again, this is sort of this long-lasting political dynasty obviously is not new or unique to us in Bangladesh. I think to cite random examples, I'm sure many of you may be aware that Paul Biya of Cameroon has been the president since 1982. And I think he has announced his intention to contest the next election, though he's in his 90s. So he has ruled the country for more than 40 years. And alternatives, his wife or son as alternatives are also being discussed. Closer to home, Cambodia had Hun Sen as the head of the government from mid-80s until 2023. And in 2023, he ostensibly handed power over to his son. So that's also more than 4 decades of one family rule through elections and constitutions. Elections and constitutions have not been any obstacle. And even closer to home, in Pakistan, Bhutto family has been the dominant sort of political family for last more than 50 years. And Benazir Bhutto, before her assassination, unfortunate assassination in 2017, wielded our political party founded by her father, Pakistan People's Party, wielded the leadership of Pakistan People's Party to her then 19-year-old son, Bilawal Bhutto. So stories of political dynasties are not unique to Bangladesh, but many other countries, for good or bad, have gone and are going through that phase. Just a second, please.
You have 20 minutes.
Sorry. Now coming back to the political challenges, constitutional challenges of interim government. As I had said, after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, Professor Yunus formed as chief advisor of the interim government, and it's been running the country for a little more than a year now. Initially, there was a lot of Initially, the constitution was sort of, in popular perception, was identified as the main culprit which enabled the dictatorial rule of Sheikh Hasina. It was perceived that the fault lies primarily with the constitution for this dictatorial corrupt regime. So we should throw away the 72 constitution and frame or draft a new constitution, and the problem of governance would be solved. And there were a lot of other ideas were floating around, such as setting up of a bicameral parliament. Though Bangladesh is a unitary state, not a federal state, but there was a serious discussion about bicameral parliament, and then enhancing of presidential power to bring balance between the powers of presidents and parliament. And then there was also idea about forming a constitutional council for appointment to the high positions, and institutions such as Anti-Corruption Commission, Human Rights Commission were sought to be included in the constitution as constitutional institutions. So bottom line is there were a number of new and interesting ideas, but primarily focusing on the main notion that if we change the constitution, if we rewrite the constitution, but democracy and sort of rights of people would be better protected. The new government set up a number of reform commissions, initially 6, and then the number expanded to 11 on reform of police, reform of or anti-corruption commission, local government, and so on and so forth. But soon the discussion, the sort of center of discussion, the Constitutional Reform Commission became the center of attention and discussion. The political scientist of Bangladeshi origin was brought to Dhaka from America to head the Constitution Reform Commission, consisting of, I think, 7 to 9 members. And they had a series of meetings with different political parties. Now, the problem is that problems soon became apparent. That some political parties agreed with the idea of bicameral parliament, others did not. Similarly, some were in favor of reducing the power of prime minister and enhancing the power of president. Others did not. And there was some serious discussion of introducing system of proportional representation. Again, some liked it, some did not. So soon, this discussion, in a way, bogged down. And the main problem is obviously this discussant or participants in this reform discussion did not have any popular mandate, popular support. They were sort of self-selected persons or persons selected by the interim government. And soon it was obvious that the consensus of political parties, as it was hoped in November, would not emerge. And so in sort of a couple of months back, government also had rolled back on its ambition of reforms. Initially, the thinking was that the government would successfully implement a number of far-reaching reforms and then will organize an election, i.e. reform first and election later. In the meantime, the protesting students also has formed their political parties, and some of them are in the interim government. But anyway, the idea that reform first and election later has now faded away because the government, because of number of reasons and resistance, have not been able to implement many meaningful changes. And it has reconciled itself to the idea that the reform would best be implemented by an elected government. And the government has now formally announced the national election will be held in February 2026. Now, a number of issues, our experience of debates and discussions of last 13 or so months have only focused on constitutional reform, police reform, local government reform, corruption reform. So this is the judicial reform, institutional reforms. But somehow there has hardly been any discussion whatsoever, almost, about the 3 main drivers of our economy. The first is Bangladesh still predominantly, like Sri Lanka and Nepal, an agricultural country. So, and it depends on the toil of millions of farmers. There has not been any discussion, any reform proposal for the betterment of the lives of the farmer. The second drivers of our economy is more than 10 million migrant workers, Bangladeshi migrant workers working, toiling away long hours in Middle East, in United States, UK, Singapore, Korea, bringing in roughly around $25 billion worth of remittance every year. And the third driving economic forces are the 4 or so million garment workers, most of whom are women, female garment workers. And their contribution through export of ready-made garment sector is around $50 billion per year for this country. They have not at all featured in this reform discussion, which typically takes place or have been taking place in the conference or hall rooms of five-star hotels of Dhaka.
Different types of government.
So coming towards the end of my oration, what I've been saying, I would like to recapitulate in the sense that I've not discussed each and every one of them, but broadly it can be said that we have in last 50 or so years, little more than 50 years, experimented with all possible impossible types of forms of government. The government in exile in 71 started as a government in exile with a presidential form, with the president having both executive and legislative power. And then throughout 1972, we had a parliamentary form of government without a parliament. From 73 to 74, we had a parliamentary government. But then in 75, we switched to one party presidential form of government. And then we experimented with at least 2 types of military regimes. And then in 91, back to Chief Justice-led caretaker government. The 90s and early 2000 were a period of, again, back to parliamentary system of government, intercepted by non-elected caretaker government. And now since 2010, we had dictatorial parliamentary form of government. So if I look back, I think if I were to count, we have experimented with 10 to 12 types of different governments. And this is, can't say wonderful, but this is an amazing experience. There's hardly ever any dull constitutional moment. Okay, there may be dull period of 3 to 4 years, but so far we have succeeded in springing up and coming up with completely new ideas, new forms. But
3 amendments.
And another interesting aspect is, interesting may not be the right word, but anyway, our constitution has been amended 17 times in last 50 odd years. At least three were routine in the sense that the initial constitution had reserved 15 seats for women. We call it reserved women seats. So this, through subsequent amendment, this number were increased to 30 from 15, and then from 45 and then to 50. So these are sort of innocent constitutional amendments. And the other major constitutional amendment of the 17 constitutional amendments, our court has struck down 5th, 7th, 8th, 13th, 15th, and 16th amendments. So, and another amendment has gone away. I don't know how, but its 11th amendment is not in the Constitution. So practically more than 1/3 of the constitutional amendments have been declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, with very long judgment. Each of these judgments are, I think, around 500 printed pages. But the point is that more than 1/3 constitutional amendments have been declared unconstitutional by our judiciary. And one article has suffered most constitutional amendments. Article 96 of the Constitution, by my count, has been amended 7 times. This poor Article 96, which has been cutted, pasted, deleted, brought back, concerns the tenure of judges of the Supreme Court. Tenure of the judges of the Supreme Court. Initially, 72, the Constitution provided that if there is allegation of misdeed against a judge, it will be inquired by an inquiry committee consisting of judges, and if they found the allegations, if the allegations sustained, then the allegations will be placed in the Parliament, and the Parliament by 2/3 majority could remove or impeach a judge. So in 75, this was changed by the 4th Amendment, whereby the President had the sole power to appoint and dismiss judges. Then it was amended by 5th Amendment, was a compromise between the judges and Supreme Judicial Council. Supreme Judicial Council would consist of Chief Justice and the 2 senior-most judges, who would inquire into allegations of misdeed, and if they recommend them, then the President would remove them. Then again, okay, without going into further detail, the initial 72 version were brought back in the 16th Amendment, which was struck down by the Constitution. So this tug of war about 96, Article 96 also is stark reminder of the struggle for power between the judiciary and the executive.
Theoretical.
Hmm?
Theoretical works if it were.
So theorizing about such turbulent constitutional journey is quite difficult. I mean, obviously, I'm sure most of you are aware that there has been sort of some constitutional theorizing coming mostly from the global north, popularized under terms such as democratic backsliding, unconstitutional constitutionalism, or unconstitutional constitutional amendment, and so forth. These have their values, but at the end of the day, Constitution is the most political, is the law which is the most political. It is contextual, and the politics of every country has a large say in shaping the Constitution, constitutional limits, and constitutional developments. As I said, mentioned that our Constitution amendment have been declared unconstitutional unconstitutional 6 times. If my memory serves me right, 3 out of the 28 constitutions of American Constitution were challenged in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court declined to interfere every time, saying that this is a political question. This is not for the judges to decide. It will be decided by the... So it's a theory of the doctrine of political question.
Cycle.
Sorry?
Cycle of elite constitutionalism.
In lieu of conclusion, I will re-emphasize that throughout this journey of last 50 plus years, what emerges is that there were periods of repression, there were periods of dictatorship, and at the same time, there were periods of protest. Democracy depends obviously on the role of the citizens. And our citizens, time and again, have responded or struggled to uphold their democratic rights. I'm reminded of the sort of the popular movement in 1990, which ousted General Ershad. Again, I did not go into detail, but sort of mechanisms of then ruling party 2006 brought people on the street and ousted the BNP-led caretaker government. And then in 2024, there was ouster of seemingly Iron Lady, Sheikh Hasina. So there is, on one hand, there's a cycle of elite consolidation of the constitution, using the constitution, its words and its phrases by the elite to consolidate their power. But on the other hand, at the same time, people have on several occasions rose up to disrupt the elite's hold on the constitutional process. I think going back to, I don't know how do I put it. I mean, I did study law in the good old Soviet Union days of 70s, and some lessons still remains with me. The idea of objective condition and subjective conditions of change. We have had several objective conditions for dramatic changes. Objective condition meaning in the sense that people don't want to live by the old rules. They want change of the rulers from coming from their poverty, exploitation, whatever, unfairness, lack of opportunity, lack of employment, etc. I mean, when people get fed up with the existing system, that's objective conditions, and we have had this objective conditions in the sort of 1990, 2006, 2024. But to be successful, to bring in meaningful changes, you also need subjective condition, i.e., sort of political organization which will guide this discontent into a new dawn, into a new arrangement, into a new framework, into a new regime of rights. So again, I mean, I think ours is a good example of 2024. I think that's what, just from the BBC and other international news media I gleaned last 2 days. The Nepal also, people were fed up with the existing regime. They came out in protest and ousted the government. So the objective conditions led to the sudden change of government. And now they have set and tried to figure out what to do next. So the subjective conditions were not in place. And this is also reflected clearly in our 2024 uprising. Because people were really full of hopes and aspirations. Yes, we got rid of a ruthless dictator and her quarterback. But somehow we had failed to formulate the vision for the future. After the demise of Sheikh Hasina, after the fleeing of Sheikh Hasina, we did not have an idea what will replace A. So, but this is an ongoing circle, and this is the correct time for me to end with, again, this is because this is a Sir Ivor Jennings memorial oration. I think I'll finish by recalling that he had said that Constitution is only a text. Constitutional government is issue of government. So we are addressing that issue of government rightly, wrongly, successfully, unsuccessfully. And I'm sure we'll continue to do that. And one day, all of our countries will have a better, more democratic, more inclusive, less discriminatory, and equal regimes. Thank you very much. And again, I express my gratitude for your kind invitation and the hospitality. Again, I'm grateful to the organizers, including Professor Deepika Ugadama and the authorities of the university. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malik, for that extremely thought-provoking oration. And I have no doubt that our audience benefited immensely from your valuable insights, which have provided us impactful perspectives to reflect on. Now, I cordially invite Dr. Kaushalya Madugalla, Senior Lecturer of the Department of Law, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Pamoda. Good evening to all of you. Professor Ravi Kurupuge, Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor of University of Peradeniya, our distinguished speaker, Professor Shahdeen Malik, Dr. Prabhat Ekanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Professor Deepika Udagama, the Chair Professor of Law at the Department of Law, Dr. Kalna Senaratne, the Head of the Department of Law, and my dear colleagues and participants. It is my privilege to deliver this vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Law, University of Peradeniya, at the conclusion of the Sir Ivor Jennings Oration of 2025. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Shahdeen Malik, for sharing his expertise and knowledge. Your exposition of the current constitutional democracy and the politics of Bangladesh were not only informative and engaging, but also it has given us a lot of material to think and reflect upon. Thank you for your thought-provoking speech, sir, and for providing us with useful insights regarding how law and policy is received by the society and how they operate in the country and broadly in the region. We would also like to thank the Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor of University of Peradeniya, Professor Ravi Kurupuge, for gracing this occasion with his presence and for your inspiring words. Our sincere thanks go to the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Dr. Prabhat Ekanayaka, for honoring us with his presence and for his encouragement and support for making this oration a resounding success. And to our Chair Professor of Department of Law, Professor Deepika Udagama, as the organizer of this oration, whose leadership and guidance has contributed to the success of this event. Your vision, guidance, and commitment to academic excellence has indeed made it possible to make this event a great success. We would also like to thank our head of the department, Dr. Kalna Senaratne, for your tireless efforts and unwavering dedication to make this event a success. Your attention to detail and continuous support was instrumental in making this event a reality. I would also like to thank Dr. Cynthia Farid of the Law Chambers of Dr. Shahdeen Malik for liaising matters from Bangladesh. Special thanks go to all the academic staff of the Department of Law, especially to Mr. Hiranta De Silva, Ms. Pamuda Jayasundara, and Ms. Hasani Disanayak for methodically planning and coordinating this event. And also the members of the Law Students Association of the Department of Law for their presence and support throughout this process. We would also like to thank the non-academic staff of the Department of Law, including Mr. Rohana Rajapaksha and the technical staff of the Faculty of Arts, who were behind the scene and ensured that this event runs smoothly. Your efforts are acknowledged and well appreciated. And to all the attendees for your enthusiasm in attending this event and for your engagement throughout this evening. We hope this event was enriching and inspiring for all of you. So with that, I would like to end my vote of thanks. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Dr. Madugalla. We have now come to the end of today's proceedings. I thank all of you for joining us in this prestigious occasion, and the soft copy of the keynote speech and the video recording will be made available on the Law Department's website. If anyone wishes to seek our assistance in obtaining these, please do contact us. Thank you very much again for your support and attendance in this occasion. We wish you all good health, success, and happiness. Thank you.